When I first took a look at the Elemental Lord strategy, I didn't think too much of it. I mean, the monsters of the Elemental Lords seemed really powerful, but having 5 monsters of the same attribute just seemed to make me back away from the archetype in total. And then looking at the Elementsaber monsters, they seemed really good until you realize that you have to discard monsters from your hand to the graveyard to gain their effects. But here comes their field spell card, which is probably one of the more powerful field spells in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Being able to utilize monsters from your deck to the graveyard is what really fuels this deck. And I can tell you, if you play this deck, you'll probably never lose your element. Get it? Elements, because elements. I'm TheCaliEffect, and if you guys want to see more videos like this, then go ahead and encourage the Elemental Lord, which means destroy that subscribe button. But more importantly, you can win rows, which means destroy again that notification bell, because we just too strong. Without further ado, I present to you an epic Elemental Lord deck profile. Before we get into the deck profile, I just wanted to let you guys know, I know some people see me some sort of a hype man at times. Sometimes archetypes might get hyped a little bit more than what I would want them to be. So I'm going to come off with you guys just front forward. I don't see this deck as a competitive deck, as a tier deck right now. I do think it has a lot of potential. I think it does have the potential to give tier decks, you know, a challenge. And even right now, if you can consistently get the field spell, which this deck does aim to do, you could give them a run for the money. But since the deck is so reliant on the field spell card to operate, I wouldn't tell you guys to take this anything more than a local level event just to have fun with. But that doesn't mean that this deck isn't still fun to play. It's still a really awesome deck, and I like the Elemental Lord. So starting off with the monsters, we run 3 Elemental Lords, 1 copy of 4 Courage, 1 copy of Glacia, and 1 copy of Rinrose. These 3 are the big 3 of the deck. They're extremely powerful, with 2 of the effects being banned effects. So Rinrose is a Harpy's Feather Duster, which is a ban, and Glacia is a Delinquent Duel, which is also banned. Being able to wipe your opponent's back row and discard 2 cards from their hand is just atrocious. And then 4 Courage, being able to wipe your opponent's board, is also a used to be banned card. So these are pretty much your powerhouses of the deck. You don't really want to play more than 1 copy of each. Mainly because they do tend to brick in your hand in opening games. You can send them to the graveyard and then just gain their effects through Elementsaber Ana, but I think that this is a really solid number. We are supposed to be getting Grand Soil out, and when we do, I would consider playing a Grand Soil as well as these 3 Elemental Lords. For the Elementsaber monsters, this is arguably one of the worst cards of the deck. 3 copies of Elementsaber Willard. Willard is good because it allows you to send cards from your deck to the graveyard if you have the field spell up. But more importantly, it gains effects depending on which cards you send. Now, if you send an Earth or Wind, your monsters cannot be destroyed by battle. If you send a Water or Fire, your monsters cannot be destroyed by card effects. And if you send a Light or Dark, your monsters cannot be targeted. So if you can summon 2 Willards to your side of the field, that's a win condition. Your monsters can't be destroyed by battle, they can't be destroyed by card effects, and they can't be targeted, as well as your field spell giving you a nice, pretty nice boost from summoning your monsters off of Willard. This is literally a win condition. Now, this card does feed into your brick, unfortunately, but I just felt that it was too good to pass up. Next is 3 copies of Elementsaber Ana, and this card is also a really important copy. And is the reason why you can run such a low Elemental Lord count. By discarding 1 Elementsaber Elemental Lord from your hand to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 Elemental Saber Elemental Lord from your graveyard to your side of the field, ignoring its summoning conditions. So Ana can basically tutor back your Glacia with your Rinrose or your 4 Courage to your side of the field, no matter if you use them for an Elementsaber Willard effect or a different effect. It's really powerful because it allows us to use these cards when we have to, and we don't necessarily have to have 5 Elemental Lords in our graveyard to gain their effects. Next is 3 copies of Elementsaber Makani. This card's also pretty decent. It allows you to search Elementsabers from your deck to your hand or Elemental Lords by discarding 1 card. Essentially, by herself, she replaces the card that she discards, which isn't bad, and she does fuel the graveyard for your Elementsaber monsters. And then next, we run 1 copy of Elementsaber Maulo. This card isn't bad. It's not necessarily good either. It allows you to discard 1 card to send Elementsaber from your deck to your graveyard. If you have the field spell, basically says you can send 2 Elementsaber monsters from your deck to your graveyard. So it's not that bad. It's also just not that good, because if you don't have the field spell, then it looks like you're pitching for almost nothing for no advantage. 1 copy of Elementsaber Lapo Eula. Basically, this card is pretty decent. I don't like its attack because it's 400, but it says when a spell or trap card is activated, you can send 1 Elementsaber monster from your deck to your graveyard to negate and destroy it. And that's pretty good. The only reason why we run 1 copy is because I've actually realized that when playing this deck, it comes up a lot to open this card and you want to summon it and if you do summon it, you kind of pay for it because it's 400 attack. It doesn't really do anything for you. So it's better to be searched off of and to be special summoned through your elemental training than to be normal summoned. Same with Elementsaber Maluhu. This is probably one of the stronger Elementsaber monsters, and you guys are probably questioning why I play it at 1. I also realized that this deck isn't an anti-meta like deck. It's more of a synergy combo based deck, and I was playing 3 copies of Mahulu because it has the strongest effect for protection on itself. It flips opponent's monsters face down, but I just didn't see that as fulfilling my strategy. It didn't do anything to help me tutor Elemental Lords to the graveyard or anything. Nonetheless, it's still a really good card. I think a 1-of is a really good, and since we can search into it or summon it through elemental training, it was perfect. That's it for the Elementsaber monsters. For the support cards, 3 copies of Photon Thrasher. This card is really good because the main thing that you want to do with this deck is tutor 2 warriors to your side of the field so you can make Isolde, and Isolde will help you generate more advantage. This deck really hurts when it comes to advantage, especially if you don't have a field spell because you have to discard cards from your hand, and this card is to help mitigate that. Next is 3 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. This is the best hand trap in the game. If you guys think differently, that's your opinion. It's fact that this is the best hand trap in the game. It just hits so many other great cards. I think it's better than Ash Blossom. There's really no reason to main Ash Blossom over Ghost Ogre right now. And then, I guess for Card of Demise, but I mean, I just rather Ghost Ogre the diagram. And then there's 1 copy of Destrudo, the Lost Dragons Frisian. This card is to help us get into our field spell as fast as possible. I know some people like to run more than 1. You don't need more than 1. I just don't see needing more than 1. It goes to the bottom of your deck on top of that. It's just a waste of space if you're playing more than 1. And if you open it, then you can use this effect and then still do what you need to do. That's it for the monsters at what I believe is 22 maybe. For the spells, 3 copies of Temple of the Elemental Lords, best card of the deck. Basically, all your monsters you control gain 200 attack and defense for every monster with different attributes in your graveyard. Also, once per turn, you can search an Elemental Lord or Elementsaber monster from your deck to your hand, but you have to skip the battle phase of your next turn. So if you're using this effect, make sure you're going for game, or just pushing for an insane amount of damage. Or if one of your Elemental Lords were accidentally destroyed, you can just search, and you're gonna lose your battle phase anyway, so you might as well just get a free search out of it. The most important thing about it is that if you want to use any of your Elemental Lord monsters effects, you can use Elemental Lords from your deck. So that's the most important part, and that's the reason why this card is so good. It works really well with Willard. 2 copies of Dragon's Ravine. This is the search into the Destrudo, which ultimately gets you into your temple, and that's pretty important. 3 copies of Terraforming. I mean, you couldn't be. I'm running 5 seal spells. I really wanted to run Terraforming and Set Rotation. I just couldn't find room for Set Rotation, but I'm literally leaning to running Set Rotations and Pseudo Spaces as well, because Pseudo Space can copy tempo, and you can do other stuff with it. But I really felt that this deck needed some draw power, and I wanted to abuse Isolde as much as possible, so I figured out a way to abuse Isolde, and it was in my last deck profile, the Goki deck profile, as a side option. And if you look at the most important cards that I want to summon are Makani, because it searches, and Aina, because it special summons from the graveyard. So 2 equipped spell cards was more than enough, so we decided to run 6, which allows me to use Isolde twice, essentially. 3 copies of Cursed Bamboo Sword, 3 copies of Broken Bamboo Sword, and 2 copies of Golden Bamboo Sword. This fixes so many problems within the deck. It gives me, first of all, quick spell cards to send with Isolde to special my Elementsabers, and then it gives me a little draw engine to gain advantage for. So now if I don't have the Temple of the Elemental Lords, I can now pitch those cards from my hand to the graveyard and still have a sizable decent hand. I really like this combo, or this strategy inside of this deck, because it gives you so much advantage and it rewards you for playing the only Link monster that you're going to go into. Then lastly is 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army. That's it for spells. For traps, just 2 Elemental Training. I wanted to fit more traps in here, but there really wasn't. I just really tight for room when it comes to like getting into your power cards, getting into as many cards as possible. But this card is really good. It protects your Temple of the Elemental Lords. It also allows you to tutor your Elemental Sabers into any other monster that you want. And on top of that, it's a Beckoning of Light for Elemental Lords. So in case you brick, also discarding Bamboo Sword with Dragon Ravine or this card is just advantage. So that's always good. That's it for the main deck at 40, I want to say 40 or 42 cards. And now I can get you guys onto the extra deck. Okay, so for the extra deck, I'm going to be real with y'all. It's only 3 cards you're really going to play in this deck. 2 copies of Isolde and 1 Ancient Fairy Dragon. Everything else in here, literally, this deck it could be budget for you guys, because you don't have to play these cards. I run the Black Rose for board wipes. Nightmare Cerebus, Nightmare Goblin, Nightmare Phoenix, Nightmare Unicorn, because these are generic Link monsters that are pretty good. A Borolo Dragon, Sarjuya, again generic ones. You can actually make these in the deck. Nightmare Griffin. This card's kind of mandatory, not really. 1 copy of Hope Harbinger. Normally, if you have 2 level 8s on your field, you have 4 Courage or Windrose, Molan Glacial Courage, you know, either of those, you're probably going to win the game. But in case, you can make Hope Harbinger. As you guys can see, there's still some empty slots. Run Winner's Cherries targets. I'm serious, just run Winner's Cherries targets. Doesn't really matter. And then that's going to, you know, bring us right into the side deck. So, of course, we're running 3 copies of Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries because I told you guys to run Winter Cherries targets, and this is probably why you would be running Winter Cherries targets. It's pretty good for disabling the opponent. This deck doesn't have a lot of options against some Link monsters, so being able to disrupt your opponent's Link monsters are great. If you guys want to main the Winter Cherries, that's perfect too. It's nothing wrong with that either. 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. Though this card is less powerful than Ogre, in my opinion, it's still a pretty good card, especially if you can side or have both the Ashes and Ogres against certain matchups. You're probably going to win. Like True Draco, that's also good to have Ashes and Ogres against them because they have so many great cards. 1 copy of 4 Courage, 1 copy of Molan Glacial, 1 copy of Windrose. Basically, you can mix and match with your main deck the monsters that you need. So if your opponent doesn't play any back row, there's no use to playing Windrose. You might as well just play another Molan Glacial, another 4 Courage, and vice versa for the other cards. It really depends on what you see in your matchups. 3 copies of evenly matched Kaijus if you guys can't afford them, and they are coming out in the Mega 10, so you know, you probably should be able to afford them very soon. And then 3 copies of Call by the Grave to stop those pesky hand traps. Also good against Infernoid and all that other Rift Draft. Thank you guys so much for watching another segment of the Cali Effect. Hope you guys enjoyed this Elementsaber deck profile and deck profile madness. Flames of Destruction is a really good set. If you guys have any cards that you were getting rid of, hit your boy up because I'm buying those cards, man. But thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy. Hope you guys are having a great day like I am.